All right, so in chapter 2, we start off talking about the definition of family, what makes up a family. One of the examples given in the textbook is to look at different families that we see on television, which is definitely a reflective of our culture and kind of how our society is viewing family at that point in time. So when you look through history at some of the older TV shows, we're kind of starting with the very traditional family of just mom, dad, kids. Then we kind of move into some more different types of families, like the Brady Bunch being a blended family. So different types of families being seen on television for our American culture. So sometimes the TV culture can really be helpful in promoting acceptance of different types of things. So then we would see, different ethnicities and things like that as far as um, more progress towards this acceptance of different types of families. And then now we see all kinds of different families on television shows, same-sex families, kids that are adopted, single parents, multi-generational families. So um, all different types of families that we would see today on TV, which probably would not have been the case 50 years ago, when some of those more traditional families were the only ones being shown. So that brings us to our video lecture participation question. Tell me, what is your favorite TV family? And then how does that relate to your definition of what you think a family is? Why do you like that TV family? How does that relate to your own family? You can say as much or as little as you want in that participation question. Just type in to the text box there in the drop box what your favorite TV family is and why, how that relates to your definition of family, and you will get your points for the video lecture participation question. Okay, then we're going to move into um, Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory. So this is one of the main theories of development, of how these kind of subsystems interact and influence a person or a family. So this is one of the big theories that you'll find in the family sciences. You will see this probably in most of the family science classes that you'll be taking if you are in this program. You'll be hearing this a lot. You might have already heard of it. So it tells us what influences the family, what influences are going on inside the family and outside of the family. So for this model in this textbook, there are only 4 systems that they explain. Um, some of the more in-depth models, like up in other classes later on in your program, you will hear about some other systems. But for now, we're just going to focus on these 4. So the first is the microsystem. That is just the basic unit. That's the very most close to the individual. So this is your family. So the parents are a microsystem. The parents and children, basic family is a microsystem. Then you've got the mesosystem is the next level, and that's going to be a relationship between 2 microsystems. So let's say an example would be a school classroom would be a microsystem. So teachers and students in one little classroom, that's going to be a microsystem. And then we've got a family, so that's the second microsystem. So then when those 2 microsystems start to interact, that creates a mesosystem. So let's say we go for a parent-teacher conference at the school and mom and dad are talking to teacher about what's going on at school, and teacher wants to know what's going on at home, and mom and dad want to know what's going on in the classroom. So right there, we've got a mesosystem because those 2 microsystems are interacting. The third one is an exosystem. So this is something that's not directly related to the family. It does influence the family, but it's not something that they're going to be interacting with on a day-to-day basis. So an example for this would be a parent's job. So like kids are not really going to be seeing the direct influence of the job because they're not there every day. They're not going to work. They're not meeting the boss or having to go to meetings or whatever. But they are influenced by it because, say, for example, mom has insurance benefits that are helping the kids be able to go to the doctor, get their medications that they need, or things like that. So even though the kids aren't going to work with mom, they are being influenced by mom's work because her insurance benefits is what helps keep them healthy. So that would be an exosystem. And then the last one is like the biggest level. This is kind of the big picture ideas of the macro system. So this is something like culture or, the basic beliefs of our country, just kind of big general ideas. Maybe it's political or religious or things like that. There's kind of just big picture, more vague. So those things do influence a family, but just not on such a direct level. The next model that we talk about is the human ecosystem model. So this is divided into 3 different environments, and this model talks about how these different environments also interact and influence families. So the main idea behind all of these models is just to kind of show how it influences the person or the family. And so for the human ecosystem model, it includes the natural environment, the human constructed environment, and then the human behavioral environment. So the natural environment would be things like our genes, like our DNA, biological things that we have no control over, something that we're born with. Also things that are in the natural world. So something like a water supply or things that are like the food that is grown, the vegetation that's around us, like basic things that are in our environment that are biological. The next one then is human constructed environment. So this is things that we do control as humans. So this would be like building a house, right? So we use those natural resources from the first one to be able to build a house for a family to live in. So the first one we kind of don't have as much control over because those are things that are just biologically put into our lives. But then the second one is kind of how we use those things. So we do have a little more control over those things. And then the last one is the human behavioral environment. That's sort of all of the society, how our systems are regulated, relationships, and behaviors. So this is things like laws or customs or you know, uh, school policies, things like that that are influencing our families. And then chapter 2 ends with the 4 basic needs. This is across the board basic human needs for any person. So this is not necessarily talking about, the relationships between families. This is just for any person to be able to survive. Obviously, food, clothing, and shelter, but also relationships is in there too. So um, one of the big parts of the family sciences ideology is that we're all interconnected, that we need each other, that we influence each other. So this idea that relationships are one of the basic human needs is a big part of family science. And then I want to end the lecture with the core values of family and consumer sciences. This is something that is going to be the big picture of why we do what we do in our field of being family scientists, what is important to us as a field of study. So the first is the family is the fundamental unit of society. So that's, basically that everything is kind of based off of families and what's happening within the family and all of that. Uh, Everything else kind of comes second to the family is just the basic fundamental unit. We embrace diversity and value all people. So when we're working with clients, we're not always going to feel the same way or have the same views or look the same way. In fact, we probably rarely have those things in common with people that we're working with. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong or I'm right and they're wrong or whatever. It means, we just value that we're all different. The next one is supporting lifelong learning and diverse scholarship. So we're always striving to find out more and learn more and do the best that we can to stay current on what's going on and new research and things like that. Integrity and ethical behavior is obviously very important when you're working with families, children, doing research, things like that. That's a huge part of being a family scientist is being honest, being trustworthy, really just doing the right thing when you're working with families. The next one is seeking new ideas and initiatives and embracing change. So we might kind of have an idea of how things should go for a while, and then all of a sudden some new research comes out, and we realize like, hey, we could tweak that, we could make it better, we can change something. So always being innovative, moving forward, not being stuck in your ways. And then the last one is an integrative and holistic approach. So for integrative, I kind of think of the word unity, unified, kind of all together, working together. And then holistic is sort of this idea that these all parts moving together to create a whole. So holistic kind of for me means like looking at the whole picture and not just one little individual part. So that's the core values of FCS. That's going to be an important topic that we need to remember as we're going through this first unit.